I'd like to introduce Omar Murji. Omar is an award-winning educator and author, and the 2021 recipient for the Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence. I will now pass it on to you, Omar, and you have 2 minutes whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be here. I am a teacher right now with the Toronto District School Board. I currently teach middle school, grade 7. But if we go deep dive into the past, I have a past life with the Aga Khan Development Network, and I've worked with Fortune 500 companies. So I bring different and unique perspectives from working in different countries and different contexts with different agencies and organizations into the classroom. And ultimately, I do think that if there's going to be change made, it's going to take place in the classroom and it's going to take place with the future generations. I don't think that corporations have the best track record right now of paving the pathway forward for change. So I've joined public education, and one of the things that I'm trying to do in my work is bridge the equity gap. And Obi spoke about this rather eloquently and rather well in her presentation. And that's when we look at disparity around cash, money, who's got the cash, who's funding what. The agency that kind of is tied to that is skewed in one direction. And so one of the things that I've tried to do is bring to students, young children in public education, what a private school education would be able to buy for a private school child. So that means iPads for children in public education that where the schools can't afford it. That may mean aquaponics. It might mean a fountain in the classroom. It could mean a robot. It could mean things that some folks can access, but not everyone can access. And when we understand that every child has equal capacity, and we give them the tools, we find really unique innovation and creativity that comes from it. So it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. There's a wonderful magazine. They're called Environ Buzz, and they did an article about a classroom that I work in. So I wonder if we can maybe pop that into the chat at some point, and then we'll talk about that, I'm sure, down the road.
Thank you, Omar. And yes, for sure, we can pop that in shortly for anybody who'd like to learn a bit more. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your approach to, reimagining education through these real world systems. It's really inspiring and powerful to see how we can be modeling future classrooms going forward.
Now, Umar, you've created Canada's first eco-smart classroom. How does hands-on technology, integrated learning, like aquaponics and hydroponics, help students understand sustainability and develop solutions-oriented thinking?
Thank you for that question. There are lots of different complex ways of looking at sustainability, and our approach has been really to make it hands-on and to look at ways in which students are going to be able to learn information and retain information so that they can make an educated use of that in their future decision making. And it's interesting, biomimicry and biophilic design integration into the classroom space has a positive impact. There's so many studies that show that. And when the students are immersed in an environment that has all of that, they start to bring a certain awareness, a different sort of lens to the work that they do. And I'll give a really easy example of this. We have a student that's doing their business project. They have to come up with a product design, and they're digging around in the deep pockets of their brain trying to figure out a way to do this assignment. And they then look around them in the classroom to see what inspiration they can draw. And we have aquariums in the classroom, so they look at this, see this algae in there, do a little bit of research, and think, okay, I can make a bucket using this algae. I can dry out the algae, I can mix it with some glue or some material, and I can make a bucket. And then so they try to do that, and then they try to say, oh, well, maybe we could make beach toys out of this and become biodegradable beach toys. And this is now their business project, different class, different subject, but they're taking in the information from what's built into their environment in their immediacy and in the classroom. So this is a concept referred to as the third teacher. That's not just the teacher that's in front of you, that it's the classroom and the environment that the students are in that will also teach them a lesson. So something hands-on, and also scaling things to the local level. Again, I know you talked about this in your presentation as well, but finding, climate change, global warming is such a complex, big concept. But when we say local warming, well, what's happening in the city of Toronto with emissions? What's happening in California with emissions? What's happening in Barrie with emissions? We can tackle that in little bite-sized pieces.
So yes, I was saying that yes, Omar, we've been to your classroom and we've seen how the students are forced to find solutions. One issue begets another solution, and that's to, find solution to a bigger picture, bigger solution, bigger issue. Now, through your collaboration with Indigenous partners, you've incorporated land-based learning into your approach. Why is it important to integrate Indigenous knowledge systems into modern education, particularly in advancing climate action?
So I think there's a lot that we as a collective society don't know, having come to a new land and settled here. And this became very obvious to me when I was working with a teacher just next door to me at a school a few years ago, and they happened to be members of the Indigenous community. And we walked out into the yard where the kids were playing, and there was a little play structure that the kids were building. They were pulling sticks and they made a little stick shop. They called it the stick shop. And I looked at this teacher and said, "Oh, that's great. They made a shop and they're learning about economy." And she looked at me and she said, "This is the worst thing that they've ever made." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And she said, "No, because you watch how quickly this turns into conflict. Watch how quickly they start to say, well, it's my stick and it's my stone and it's not yours." And she was right. Within a few minutes, the conflict started to emerge. This person touched my stick shop. And so they had taken this idea of ownership over nature. And it's something that we don't necessarily realize. We just kind of walk around with this as though the resources that are out there are for the taking. But I think the perspective she was trying to put forward is that these are not, nature is not a bank of resources for the taking, but it's nature, and that we need to have a completely different understanding of our relationship with nature. So one of the first things that we set up at the school that I'm currently at are outdoor education, well, outdoor learning spaces. And it's to facilitate land-based learning. And we take the kids outside in different seasons and we just sit and we do the regular activities that we might do, reading, writing, whatever, but we'll sit around a tree and we'll have a look at the tree and we'll be, again, immersed in nature. And part of this is so that we start to remake what the relationship is with nature and what our dependence is with nature, and what our understanding is of nature. If we put the kids into a little box and little chairs and little desks and we close the windows and we turn on a projector and then we start showing them pictures of nature, we're not doing the right thing. We're really not doing the right thing. We need folks to be in touch with the real, actual nature that's there.
Thank you. So that's great. So absolutely. So take the kids to the nature instead of trying to show them what it is. Let them experience it themselves. Let them understand what it is that this is all about. So that's great. Thank you. So your classroom is a model of innovation. Okay. What would it take to scale this kind of creative interdisciplinary learning across schools to ensure more students can become leaders in sustainability and innovation?
There has to be a genuine desire for this to take place. And in public education, the institutions are a representation of the public or reflection of the public. So if there's public desire for this, and if the political leaders have a desire for these kinds of spaces, this type of creativity in education, then that's important. That's sort of the first step. And it seems like a top-down kind of thing, but it does really start there. And then there has to be what I think Maria is talking about as well. There has to be partnership. There has to be connection between different levels of these organizations. So, I mean, a teacher can't do anything unless their principal agrees and approves it. A principal can't do anything unless their superintendent is okay with it from a policy standpoint, and they can line up the policies. And the policies are made by the politicians and the directors in various boards of education. And so, if those folks have set up the right policies, then we have this enabling environment that allows us to do the things that we hope and desire and want to do for these children. So partnership across the levels within the institution are going to be important, all the way up to the top. And then we need partnership across different agencies. And that's where, I mean, today it feels like a setup because I'm talking a little bit about biomimicry and biophilic design in my classroom space. and working with artificial intelligence and deep technology. And you've got the two experts right here, and we're doing the implementation in our classroom. We haven't talked, but it's almost inviting a conversation to say that we need to look at what could partnership achieve here. If deep tech joined in with the Toronto District School Board, and Melissa hopped in with together with us, and we did some really good brainstorming on what biophilic design could be for the future generations, and how could we implement or create a new dream space, and make that something for the kids. So it also comes down to then dreams and people willing to want to do this, so open-mindedness. And I'll say that if we open doors through conversation and partnership, we have to prop those doors open and support those to continue. And we're doing that today with this conference. This is an opportunity for us to prop the doors open, keep them open, because the world is a windy place. Thanks.
Thanks, Omar. You're so right. You're so correct. There has to be that genuine desire, public desire. Parents have to want it as well.
Yeah.
Public have to want it, partnerships key, and then open-mindedness. And yes, the experts being available to make it happen, right? So that's really great.